I have a co-author on this paper, Mr. John Gustafson, who has materially contributed to the paper and for which I am very thankful. Look at the agenda, a little bit of what I'm going to talk about. USPAP Standards for Appraisal Review. We're going to talk a little bit about the opinion of quality of appraisal of the appraisal under review, and there are a few little things we'll talk about there. Typical errors found while doing a review task. Added opinion of value of the subject property when your client suddenly asks you, while you're doing this, would you give me a value also? And then stumbling blocks of the review appraiser that he runs across. So we'll talk a minute about the USPAP Standards for Appraisal Review. Used to be Standard 3. In the 2020-2021 version, they have broken it down into Standard 3 and Standard 4. So they split Standard 3. Standard 3 now is the appraisal review development. What do you need to do? You know, identify the problem, the typical things that we wind up doing. Standard 4 now tells you how to report it. Does not give you the format it has to be reported in, but it does give you the content that you have to report. So what is a review, an appraisal review? And you'll hear people call it a review appraisal, and that's usually done in the commercial marketing aspect of things. So we're going to call it an appraisal review because that's what USPAP calls it. It's the act or process of developing an opinion about the quality of another appraiser's work that was performed as part of an appraisal. As an adjective, it's of or pertaining to an opinion about the quality of another appraiser's work that was performed as part of an appraisal or appraisal review assignment. Our observation is it's about the work. It's not about the appraiser. It's about the product that you're looking at, and that is what you're reviewing. So, if the appraisal review concerns the quality of the work that's subject to the appraisal review, the assignment, USPAP Standard 3 is the one that's applicable and that we're going to use. So, how do you develop an opinion of quality of the appraisal under review? First, you look at 5 kind of fundamental properties as the review appraiser. The completeness, the accuracy, the adequacy, the relevancy, and reasonableness. I looked, was on a project where there were 2 appraisals. One was at a few $1 million, the other was at $1 billion. One of those was not reasonable. You also have to consider the law, regulations, and the attended user requirements have to be considered in here. So, we're going to talk again about our favorite topic, it seems like today, highest and best use. Did the appraiser determine the correct highest and best use of the property? Was the highest and best use determined based on the property stage of use at the effective date? If I have a piece of goat pasture and I have a few drill holes on it that have mineral intercepts in it, I don't have a highest and best use of mine. It's not going to be done, even if it could be a mine, it's not going to be done in the foreseeable, reasonable future in most cases. You have so many roadblocks in between that can derail you. So it's as of the effective date. So if the future use is other than existing use, does that have a reasonable chance of coming to fruition in the near future at no risk? And this is the reason that John and I do not believe that the highest and best use of an exploration property is a mine. So, if you're going to use this future project, did you use the appropriate hypothetical condition? Or was the appraisal flawed by the lack of this hypothetical condition? So, was the highest and best use properly determined? Has the original appraiser analyzed all relevant legal, physical, and economic factors as required by USPAP and USFLA to support his or her highest and best use? Is the appraiser's opinion of financial feasibility based on the preliminary economic assessment, a pre-feasibility or feasibility study, or on someone else that the appraiser relied upon? Or is it simply a statement that says, my highest and best use should make money, should cover cost, and should result in a profit? And that's the statement, without any economic analysis, without any due diligence of any analysis of in a report that you relied on. These are the types of things you're looking for in here. We're not picking on just the minute little details at this point. The quality of use of reserve and resource terminology. Were proper resource categories used? Is it following Crisco? Or is it following something that the appraiser made up or read somewhere? And if they are following Crisco, did they allocate the resource to the proper category? If you said it was measured, if the appraiser said it was measured resource, is there enough geologic evidence to be able to classify it as measured? Remember, the investors, mostly not geologists, read these things and they read what a measured resource is supposed to be, and they're thinking, oh, there's a reasonable probability that could be converted to a reserve and mine someday. It's misleading. Did the original appraiser conduct due diligence on an expert report that he relied upon? He's got an expert that's talking. Did he go to the site? Did the appraiser go to the site and locate drill holes that were reported in the report that he was given? If there wasn't a latitude, longitude that they could see, did they go and try to find them, as we heard earlier today? Did you try to verify the data that was in the report that, or not you, but the appraiser, did they try to verify or conduct due diligence on the data that they were using from somebody else? So due diligence is extremely important, and a very critical part of due diligence is peer review. Did somebody else, some other set of eyes, look at that appraisal report that you're reviewing before it was released? Or is it only the appraiser that looked at it and, oh yeah, it's good? Did he sign it? If the historical data was used, did the appraiser try to validate any of it? Did he see any original analytical certificates from the laboratories? Did he check the database, do any spot checking to see if the data were transferred correctly into the database that the appraiser used? Was there any type of due diligence and validation of the historical data? Or did he just say, oh yeah, this was done in 1985. It must be good. Did he try to verify what the categories of resource that were used in 1985 that this first person used? Did he try to validate those in terms of what they mean today? Did the client or somebody put a lot of unreasonable restrictions on the appraisal that was made? And if they were there, did the appraiser address them as to how they affected that appraisal? Did the review appraiser, we must understand the potential impacts of the incorrect use of the original appraiser of his appraisal assumptions, or extraordinary assumptions, hypothetical conditions. I mean, appraisal assumptions could just be basically our assumptions. We assume something's correct, and if it's not correct, it's not really any big deal. It's not a material, it's not going to materially affect what you've done. Yes, it was a wrong assumption. Yes, it'll have some effect, but it's not a material. Now, on an extraordinary assumption, you didn't know what was there. You've made this assumption, and if it's wrong, it has potentially a material, or it does have a material effect on what you've done. Same with a hypothetical condition. If you use the wrong hypothetical condition, it can have a serious impact on the final answer. And were there any jurisdictional exceptions that were used that kept you from doing all that you have to do when you're dealing with USPAP? And finally, back to the assignment restrictions. Were there restrictions put on you where you could not, where the original appraiser could not perform as should have performed? What were those constraints? How did they affect it? As the review appraiser, you have to understand these things. You have to look into them. Quality of sales approach. Were they truly comparable? Are they like apples and oranges? What was really bought and sold? Was it real property in fee or a patented claim? Or did you buy a concession? In Mexico, the Mexican government owns the minerals. They will sell you a concession, and you can sell that concession to somebody else. But that concession, all it does, it allows you to mine them. You can mine the minerals, and you pay the Mexican government a royalty or pay them taxes on it. But you don't own the minerals, you own the concession. Did you buy a lease or a license? Again, these can have effects on the appraisal that was done. We talk about making adjustments. Did the appraiser that was doing the work, picking these comparables, did he have small adjustments, or was he making 200% adjustments? Generally, the larger the adjustment, the less comparable the property happens to be. Now, this example, you can say a number of adjustments were made, but they're all small adjustments. This was probably a fairly comparable property to the one that was being appraised. Opinion of information which should have been considered by the original appraiser must be used by the review appraiser in developing an opinion as to the quality of the work under review. For example, on the effective date, there was available, earlier than the effective date, an excellent comp sale candidate, but it was not used. It should be used. That is a problem, if they're not using the available information. You can go one step further. You, as the review appraiser, can take data that was available after the effective date and use that retrospectively to see if the trend continued, but you cannot use that information to impugn the appraiser because he did not have that data available to him. But when you're writing your report, you can make mention that additional data became available that affected the appraisal in a certain way. But you cannot use it to go after the appraiser because it wasn't available to him. If the review appraiser judges the appraisal report as unacceptable, the review appraiser does not have to state requirements in USPAP that were not fulfilled. We do not have to go by chapter and verse. But as the review appraiser, we must include the reasons for our judgment that the product was unacceptable. We don't have to cite the exact word for word what you didn't do, but we do have to give our reasons for why we say this is not an acceptable appraisal report. I'm going to have to slow down or I won't be through early, and I know y'all don't want that. What are some of the typical errors that you find during review appraisals? Failure to conduct due diligence is one of the main ones. It's a big one. Failure to spend the time to see if the information you are using is accurate and valid. Just assume, well, this guy did it and signed it, it must be good, so I can just take it and use it. You do that at your own peril. You need to conduct due diligence. And in fact, in Canada, under NI 43-101, there's a due diligence defense. If you conduct due diligence on these things, you do have a defense if something goes wrong and somebody's decided to sue you. Failure to use proper resource reporting categories. Seems like sometimes people want to, well, yeah, it's indicated, but let's put it up here and measured. It looks a little better, or something of that nature. If you, I've looked at a couple lately where we did have some resource categories that were not correct. In fact, one of them that I saw, I didn't do the review on. One of the stock exchanges did the review on it in another country, and they called it back and said, you must make some changes in here because you're misleading because you have your resources in the wrong categories. And the appraiser had to make some changes. So it's not just in this country where we do review appraisals. Unsupported highest and best use on the effective date. That's another big one. We've talked about the problems you can run into if you use the wrong highest and best use. When we do comparison sales, we're supposed to use properties that are of similar or same highest and best use. That's one of the things we're supposed to be looking at when we pick the comparison properties that we have. Are they similar in highest and best use? Are they similar at the same stage of development that you have? You don't want to take a property that has a producing mine on it and try to compare it and say that that is a comparable property to some land that's just raw land. It's just an idea. It's an exploration target type thing. You can't use those two as comparable properties. Comp sale candidates not being of similar highest and best use with the property that's under review. That's what we just talked about. Failure to state a hypothetical condition or an extraordinary assumption. You state that there's you are reviewing an appraisal and the appraiser has stated the highest and best use is a mine, but in reality there's no mine there. Doesn't put a hypothetical condition in. Now you're an investor, you're reading this, highest and best use of mine. Oh boy, This is a good-looking investment. I'm going to invest in this thing. Overloading with irrelevant data. The more data, the better. Actually, if you put too much data in, you can lose your transparency, which is something that you have to have. Let's say I have a lead-silver deposit. 80% of the value is in lead, 20% is in silver. But in the appraisal report I'm reviewing, the appraiser has spent 20 out of 30 pages on the silver market and 10 pages on the lead market. You may be thinking, gee, silver must be really important on this thing, when in fact it's a byproduct. And it's not what's driving it, it's the lead that should be driving it. So you can actually have too much data. It can give the reader a false sense of importance of the whatever you're putting all the data in for. Oh, with all this data, it must be right. So don't throw if they put the kitchen sink in, be a little leery of it. Ignorance of the type of property interest. We've talked about that a little bit. Is it real estate? Is it a lease agreement? Sales comparison commodity error. We've heard this a couple of times in some very good talks today. Inclusion of non-arm length transactions. You start getting into this, you no longer have the willing buyer, the willing seller, or the knowing buyer. You may have the knowing seller, but if he doesn't know that it's a non-arm length transaction, he could be getting himself, the buyer could be getting into trouble. So inclusion of the non-arm length transaction. Did the appraiser that you're reviewing go to the due diligence to see if these are non-arm length transactions? If we go back to the sales comparison, if we have that, did he interview the buyer and seller of the transactions that he's using in his comparables? Another due diligence aspect that you would expect an appraiser to do. And when you're reading the report, you're going, is he just assuming these sales, or has he confirmed them? Does he know they were cash? Does he know that they actually closed? Deposit and project size differences. It's kind of hard to call those the same. Discovery and expansion treatment. In this one, the little red rectangle in the bigger rectangle is the circle in the bigger map. All the rest of the bigger map, those blobs, those are all aerial magnetic anomalies. So it's quite obvious in this case that the expansion potential is much greater for the large area than for just the little bitty one that's marked there. So you have to be, was this done correctly, or is it an error? Location and access. We all have had issues where things have not come out the way they should have on that aspect of it. Infrastructure. Do I have power? Do I have a road that can get my product from the mine to the market? Or am I going to have to come in and build roads? Am I going to have to run power lines in? Do I have water? So has the infrastructure been properly looked at in terms of, are these the same or not? Country risk. Other risks such as permitting and regulatory issues. These are all errors that affect the quality of an appraisal if they are not correctly done. They can become errors or problems. Now we come up with they want you to add a value to it. And so if we're going to add a value to it, we have other standards that we have to use. So if the appraisal reviewer is providing an opinion of a value for the property that is subject to the appraisal review, then USPAP Standard 1, which is the real property appraisal development, 5, mass property appraisal development, 7, personal property development, and 9, business appraisal come into play. Again, you can see where we have to know what it is that we're appraising. Is it a concession? Did you buy the mineral? What state were these things in, so that you know which of these are going to be applicable. The review appraiser must determine whether there's only an opinion of quality that's wanted, or whether there is a value that's being requested that you do. That is an appraisal now. And if you're doing the quality, you have to look at, okay, what are the issues to be addressed? Just like you're going through a regular appraisal. The issue to be addressed, the scope of work required to address the problem adequately, and the completion of the required research and analysis to address this issue in a manner to produce a credible appraisal review report. Because now I am putting value in it. When the review appraiser adds their own opinion of value of the property, which is subject to the review, then the reviewer should carefully identify the causes of differences from the original appraisal if his or her opinion is different from their appraisal. So I do an appraisal. I've looked at the review appraisal, and they come up with a value. My value is different than that one. I have to explain why. Why the difference? But I have to be careful as the review appraiser not to mislead the intended user when providing my supporting conclusions as to why I came up with my answer. So you have to make sure that you are not being misleading when you've done it. You've got to make sure you are accurate. You've got to make sure you're adequate in what you've done. All right. So what are some of the stumbling blocks the review appraiser runs across? The review appraiser must not commit errors of omission or commission that materially affects the appraisal review. Render an appraisal review opinion in a careless or negligent way. Allow the intended use of client's expectations to bias the appraisal review. Same thing we do in appraisal. We're not supposed to let the client's expectations influence what our value is. So, review the appraisal report, looking for the report's quality as to completeness. Is it all there? Accuracy. Is all the data accurate and reliable? Adequacy. Is there just enough and not too much? Relevancy. Is the report on target or does it miss? Reasonableness. Is the report what our peers would write? And you think at this point, oh boy, now I am finished. But the review appraiser is not finished. In fact, his hard work may be just beginning. The review appraiser has to decide, based on everything he or she has reviewed, based on their experience and all, was the appraisal report reviewed balanced and not misleading? Was the report objective and not misleading? Was it objective and unbiased? Did it use standard definitions? reasonable assumptions that were clearly explained, and when I say assumptions, I mean all three categories: hypotheticals, extraordinary assumptions, etc. And was it signed off by the appraiser? He has to think about all of those things, and then finally, he has to make the determination: is the subject report reliable and relevant? Thank you.